Good morning, traders, and welcome back to the Trader Bacon Show. I'm your host, Gates Adams, and my producer wanted me to show this to you because as my journey has continued, I've gone through this process that I'm basically forging myself, which if you have not had an opportunity to do so yet, has inspired the Forged Trader podcast, which I host. I've got 13 episodes. If you have not had a chance to see that, now is a great time to catch up. I'm on a little bit of a pause right now because I'm working on a very specific project that is going to revolve around this and is going to spur on the next series of episodes. But if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, check that out. That's a lot of fun. So I did get my fresh ink as a reminder of what it is that I'm working towards. And just a reminder when I want to revenge trade, when I want to over trade or just make those bad decisions, I just have the opportunity to look down and remind myself what it is that I am after, and that is being the Forged Trader. For those of you here, I want to just share a heartfelt thank you for those of you that continue to watch this show week after week, because it has allowed me to continue to do this show. And continuing to do the show, honestly, is the one single key that has kept me in the game of trading. I don't think I've shared this on the show, but I actually quit trading in November, but I was still doing the show. And by February, after having all of the conversations that I have with these wonderful guests who share their time, share their wisdom, and just are a part of that journey with me, have truly inspired me to get back into the game and really focus and put some attention. And the results that I've experienced since making that decision have been absolutely phenomenal compared to what I was seeing before. So I do attribute a lot of that and so much of that to those of you who faithfully watch the show, come back week after week, and indulge me in my my little passion project here. So anyway, I want to thank all of you for that. All of that said, we have an amazing guest today. Devin has been now, most traders, when they get into the game of trading, I feel like tend to come in as either a supplement to something else or maybe even to fix problems that are in another area of life financially. And they move into the game of trading trying to utilize that. Devin actually went into trading as an intention to be his primary source of income and his primary path. And I think that mindset and that difference in the way that he's been able to come into the game of trading has had a significant impact on his growth and success as a trader. So I'd like to welcome today Devin on today's episode of the Trader Bacon Show. Welcome to the Trader Bacon Show, where we showcase everyday traders that are getting funded, paid, and bringing home the bacon. Are you ready? Because the Trader Bacon Show starts right now. Devin, good morning, man.
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. We had a phenomenal morning.
It was a good one. Awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for sharing some of your time with us this morning and sharing some of your journey. Before I get into it, I should have mentioned this in the intro, but I think I got a little long-winded. Make sure that you guys sign up for the free evaluations. We will be giving away 3 evaluations through the course of the show. You will see the form in the chat here in just a moment. So make sure you fill that out before the end of the show so you've got a shot at winning that. Okay. All of that said, Devin, so look, we were joking around beforehand because it turns out I'm almost 30 years older than you. You did not start your journey as a trader like the way most traders that I know have. And that's really where they either want to add to their income or maybe they had a career that derailed and COVID hit and they were stuck at home or whatever the case may be. But that's not how you got into the game of trading. You came in with a specific intention, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about that. You're graduating from high school, and where do we go from there?
So yeah, I graduated from high school, Mountain View High School in Lawrenceville, Georgia, at the 2020. And I mean, trading not only was a career that I stumbled across, but originally I did go into it because of the money. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family at all. You know, everything that we did was through hard work, and we obviously had to earn it. And, you know, seeing my parents struggle growing up, it created a sense of urgency and a different sense of motivation in me to find something that will provide and be sustainable for, you know, the rest of our lives. And in trading, I stumbled across it. Like I was sitting in class actually, just scrolling on IG on my phone, and I see, one of those gurus posting their charts up, and all I see is just numbers and candlesticks. So all of that was foreign to me. I'm just like trying to dig as much as possible. Like, what is this? Like, what is this guy doing? And I found out it was foreign exchange. So I started off with forex, and I mean, it wasn't until this year actually that I transitioned to futures because of all of the um, scrutiny and, and uncertainty that's going on in the forex
Yeah.
industry, and just a bunch of
Mhm.
regulation. But um, with that being said, I started to study the game, study the numbers, seeing the amount of uncapped potential that it can bring, and you know seeing those type of things, especially when you come from a low income, impoverished kind of background, you you gravitate towards it. And I began to do literally everything that I could to learn that game.
Mhm.
So with that being said, I've been trading for about like 4 years at this point,
Mhm.
and it's been like a long journey, but nonetheless a great one. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how I got started into trading. um, Really kind of simple story, like very straightforward, and it was a lot of it because of the money. But eventually, I found out that it's not what I think it is. It's way more beyond that.
Mhm.
Over time, you learn things like, and I live by it now in my trading game, is that you make great trades and the great money will follow.
Right.
There's a lot of people get into it to make money, and that kind of thought process, that mental framework starting off, rip, will deteriorate and not even move anyone's journey an inch, because every decision, every trading decision that they're going into is just off the basis of making money rather than rationality and based off of their system, their logic.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point because I know a lot of traders, myself included, and I freely admit this all the time. We get so tied to the results of an individual trade. We evaluate the set. Well, okay, let me put it this way. A lot of times we don't evaluate the setup if it's a winning trade, which I think is in and of itself a mistake. But
Mhm,
when it goes against us, we over scrutinize this entry, and then we start to second guess ourselves and think that, well, why was I wrong?
mhm,
And taking that out of the mix. So you've been down this road for about 4 years now,
mhm,
and obviously continue to grow, obviously highly motivated. One of the things that I like about your story is that you started at a point where maybe you didn't necessarily have a lot of the emotional triggers and bad habits that some of us have developed over a lifetime of, working, owning a business, possibly trading in the past, or whatever the case may be. Whereas,
mhm.
do you feel like this allowed you to be a little bit more focused on that discipline versus necessarily tying yourself to that result?
I think that no matter what industry or what niche that you decide to go through, everyone has common experiences and goes through that kind of hero's journey,
Mhm.
you know, experiencing all there is to experience as far as the emotions, and that's the most important part, is knowing what that feels like.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're kind of oblivious and um ignorant to what greed feels like in the market, what fear feels like, and what it can do, then once it actually hits you, it's going to be like a huge, wake up call. And some people, they may get into trading and be lucky. They may get, a first string of winners and feel like they're invincible and that everything they touch, every decision that they make will, turn green on them. But um, going through that experience myself, I I already had the idea of like, before I lift, I go to the gym and I watch a lot of motivational stuff. So I had a background in things that required commitment, that required discipline, that required consistency and patience. Coming from powerlifting, doing things like bodybuilding, you're never going to get results instantaneously, and that's the
Right.
problem nowadays, that people seek those kind of things, you know, and when they get the results that they didn't work for, the negative results that they didn't put in the work, to get then they get upset about it, and you can't be upset with the results that you get with the work that you didn't put in.
Sure.
So with trading, I obviously knew that going into it, it's going to take some work. I did I expect for it to take as much work as it did me? No. It took me a little bit longer than it should have, but you know, regardless, you quitters never win and winners never quit.
Yeah.
And it's something that I always live by as well. So if it was one thing that I was going to put my mind to, I made sure every decision that I made catered to learning the game and to, you know, involving myself full-fledged, dropping things, making sacrifices. Like seeing success requires those type of things too, not just discipline, commitment, and all that. It requires some form of sacrifice, but yeah.
It does, and I think that we have an opportunity to have that whole experience highlighted in the sense of, you know, you got the GameStop, you got you know, the Bitcoin or the crypto boom of the early 20s, and you had a lot of people that got into the game of trading that literally overnight made massive amounts of money, depending on the, you know, compared to the level of position that they were in. And so what I have seen over and over and over again is, yes, they got this mindset that they were a great trader. They felt like their skill level was the reason for that growth. And that ultimately led to most of them losing everything they had, but they got enough of a taste of it to where they saw the opportunity and the possibility. So they managed to stick through even after giving up a lot, in many cases, a lot of what they had already gained.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit more about your actual specific strategy. And if we, let's go ahead and pull up some charts here, and let's talk about ultimately what 4 years of experience and growth and intentional development in this field has led you to do now as a consistent trader.
Absolutely. So this is trading view that I have pulled up here. I do have a 4-monitor setup, you know, 3 going horizontally and then 1 TV up above me hanging on the wall. Y'all can't see, but on this monitor right here specifically, I really only trade the NASDAQ NQ, and I have ES on the bottom to identify divergences and SMTs.
Okay.
I'll go into a little bit about that, but I'm just going to explain my chart setup. NQ is going to be on top, ES on the bottom, and for each of them, I have similar time frames pulled up. So vertically, I have 1 minute going across, 5 minute for both of them, 15, and the 60-minute chart. And then on the third monitor, I have the 4-hour time frame and the daily time frame.
Okay.
So even though I'm a scalper, I use the daily time frame and the 4-hour time frame levels to identify potential areas of interest, because the higher time frame will always dictate where the lower time frame is going to go. It doesn't matter whether you see a 5-minute bullish fair value gap, or I also trade ICT, so that terminology. It doesn't matter where you see a bullish 5-minute fair value gap. If the 4-hour time frame, if that candle is pushing down with a lot of momentum, speed, and acceleration, that fair value gap is going to get ran through.
Right.
So, you know, it's understanding those higher time frames. But like I said, I have ES and NQ pulled up for SMTs, and if y'all don't know, SMT divergences with ES and NQ, they're supposed to, or oftentimes they move in tandem.
Sure.
They are correlated, where if NQ makes a higher high and ES makes a higher high, that's correlation.
Right.
But there will be points in time in the market, particularly high impact news or high volatility times like 9:30, where there's a crack in that correlation, and NQ may create a higher high, you know, like such, and then ES falls short and creates a lower high.
Right.
So that crack in correlation, it indicates that one of it is running buy side liquidity or sell side, which wherever the SMT is, and then the other one is showing weakness.
Right.
So if I see NQ run a high and then ES fail to run its high, then I'm automatically thinking that there's a cracking correlation. ES is showing weakness because it's failing to push higher, but NQ is running buy side.
Mhm.
So that'll be, my inclination to take shorts. But that's not the only confirmation that I have. So going into, this chart, I use similar indicators. The indicators that I use, I actually pay for. The guy's name is 2 Degrees. He's a really like insane coder. He codes ICT based indicators, and
Right.
it honestly helps a lot. I don't need these indicators because I do have a trained eye in understanding the fractal part of the fractal nature of charts.
Mhm.
Because what you see pattern wise on one time frame, you can see that pattern replicate itself across multitudes of time frames and catch the same setup. So if you have a bullish setup on the 1 minute time frame, you could find that setup on the hourly time frame. The only difference is the amount of time it takes for that trade setup to pan out.
Sure.
Because each and every candle is relatively longer or shorter than the other depending on what time frame you're on. So imagine, you're not even seeing the 60-minute chart. These all could be 1 minute candles, you
Right.
know. So it's just that with this 60-minute chart, each candle, if you're trying to trade a long setup, it'll take, well, here it says 7 days for that setup to pan out if you're trying to reach the highs. But on a 1 minute chart, it could take maybe 15, 20 minutes. For that setup to pan out. So I'm looking for market structure, order flow. That's the first thing that I determine from a top-down analysis. You know, going from even the monthly down, determining where the monthly candle might go, then onto where the weekly is right now, if we're aligning with that monthly order flow, and then going down to the daily, all the way down to where I trade is the 10-second chart. As a
Wow. Oh,
scalper.
you're trading on a 10-second. Okay, so you're definitely a scalper.
Yeah. So it's like, is it necessary for me to look at all those higher time frames? No. But keeping those higher time frames perspective, if I get an entry on the 10-second chart, it'll be like the best entry ever, especially if I'm aligned with the right bias and I'm on side with the market.
Sure.
Because then at that point, at 10-second entry, if as the trade pans out, we know that the 1 minute is going to close, the 5 minutes going to close, 15 hourly, and so on. And as those time frames are closing in my favor, that gives me more conviction to hold the trade
Mhm.
or to scale in and add on to the position.
Right. Now, you said you
So
primarily trade NQ, right?
yeah.
Okay. And so when I've heard a lot of traders talk about the fact that NQ, as you get to the time, as the time frame gets to be lower,
Mhm.
you tend to have more. I don't know if risk is the right word, but you tend to have more chance of being wicked out versus it just
Absolutely.
moving in the direction that you go. How much of it? I've never traded a 10-second chart. I mean, I think the lowest I've ever traded was 30 seconds, and even that was a little dicey. So,
Mhm.
have you experienced anything like this in that low of a time frame?
I have, which is why I actually don't use physical stop losses in the market.
Okay.
I use mental stops. Every trade that I take is risking about 1/4% to 1/2%.
Okay.
And like you said, NQ, especially on the 10-second or 1 minute chart, it likes to make those 10, 15 point price spikes.
Right.
And if I have a mental stop, like not a mental stop, but if I place a physical stop and I have a pain threshold of 10 points, NQ could easily wick back down, whack me out of the trade and then go back in the opposite direction in my favor. And I've had that happen to me a lot of times, which is why I use mental stops. And it's most people say like, oh, you should always use a stop loss and you never know what could happen. It is true. There have been times where my reaction time is a little bit late on those drops and I lose a little bit more than I should. But the most important part is stopping yourself out of the trade. Most people don't have the discipline to stop themselves out. Rather, they get fearful of losing. And that fear could cause them to exit the trade early or cause them to exit the trade late. That fear can cause them to hold on to a losing trade. So with me, you know, having an aggressive kind of personality and aggressive style of trading, and sizing fairly. Um, some people may call it large. I it depends on the range of the day, really, to be
Sure.
honest, too. Because if I'm looking at the day and I'm looking at how far London has moved um over the course of that session,
Hmm.
and even looking all the way back towards Asian session, there was one particular day that was just, insane. I think it was like a couple weeks back where um after Nvidia earnings, we just dropped like 1,000 points. I don't know if you remember that day.
Yeah, I almost tough to forget.
Yeah, so that day I actually had to start trading like, oh, yeah. So August 4th, we gapped down and dropped about 1,200 points, and it hadn't even been New York session yet.
Right.
All this happened throughout Asia, London session, and then going into New York. I'm looking at this like, dang, I can't afford to be trading the same amount of contract sizes that I normally do, like on a normal day, average day. I'm looking at the average day that NQ moves. Like on a good day, it'll move about 300 to 400 points. That's a pretty good day. And
Yeah.
then on a decent day, on a small day, it'll move around 100 to 200 points. So just knowing and understanding what kind of range day it's going to be, whether it's going to be large, expansive, or it's going to be a small kind of range day, I use that to gauge how big I want to go in on contract sizing, and of
Sure.
course the setup as well. But always no more than 0.25 to 0.5% risk. Um, but I normally I scale in on my positions, and
Mhm.
that scaling is based on the conviction that I have of the trade going in my favor. Again, looking at the trade as it pans out on higher time frames, as candles start to close in my favor, from lower time frame to higher time frame, it will give me conviction to hold on to the trade and scale in. So I normally go in at about 5 to 10 con, depending on the range day,
Mhm.
and then I'll scale in another 5-10 cons as the trade's going in my favor. So I'm going to give an example that of the trade that I took today.
Mhm.
Um, I was I was looking at, starting from the daily time frame. You see, we had bounced up from this area of discount,
Mhm.
having the 618 and then rallying back into the range, going towards these highs.
Right.
And we kind of fell short on Friday, and then going into Monday, I noticed that we do have a fair value gap that we left behind on the daily. Excuse me. And seeing that, I identified that as a potential draw. And when you find a draw in liquidity, you can either trade to that draw or wait till it gets to the draw, see how it reacts, and trade the draw itself. Like I could have took shorts into the daily fair value gap, or I could wait to take longs as it gets in. But this is a daily. I obviously keep going down to lower time frames to start refining my entries
Sure.
and seeing where accurate points are, possibilities, and reaction points. So I noticed that we had a 4 hour fair value gap here and a 4 hour order block supporting price. We left
Mhm.
an imbalance, dropping down another time frame, the hourly time frame. We had internal sell side here, relatively equal lows, going into 9:30. We hadn't quite reached that yet, but then once 9:30 hit, we immediately popped down below these relatively equal lows going into that 4 hour. So let me see if I could actually replay and cancel all these too. Then dropping down to the 15-minute time frame. Um, Here we still had a fair value gap, and again, I'm just focused on that 4 hour zone. So
Sure.
going into the day, I had seen London session sweep out Asia highs, and going into New York session, we had already swept out Asia highs. How likely are we to continue rallying back up to London highs after we swept the highs and then we've basically started expanding towards a draw? In my eyes, it's not very likely, because when you've already swept the highs, it has no reason to go back and sweep it again. Maybe at a later date, but
Sure.
you know, so I'm immediately looking for shorts, but Um, originally I was looking for shorts at least because I wanted to see a New York pullback sweep out internal highs for a continuation lower, but we didn't get that. We actually got it on ES though. Um, so you could see how straight off the bat at 9:30, ES came up with all those highs that it created as it was kind of floating and drifting downwards towards the external draw on the sell side. And when 9:30 hit, we swept the highs. But then when NQ, I was extremely surprised by it because I thought NQ was going to kind of do the same thing, but it didn't do it until later. We had just a straight drop for NQ and ES swept the highs. So I'm like, okay, there's obviously a cracking correlation here, because ES and NQ should have both swept the highs or both sold down, but one was doing one thing and the other one was doing another. So I just waited. Since NQ had that immediate drop, I just waited for the market to get to that draw. So like I said, I could have taken shorts to that draw, or I could wait for the market to get to that draw and take longs and see how it reacts at.
Right.
So since the first scenario didn't play out the way that I wanted to, I opt for a second set of scenarios. So I go into the market every day, creating a game plan, all the possible scenarios that can happen across, different time frames and depending on those time frame closures. But yeah, I do think that I've been talking quite a bit. It was a long-winded answer, but
no, I think that's great, and I didn't want to stop you because I think we were getting some gold there. And of course, like, the intention is not to teach somebody how to trade in 10, 15 minutes, but to show the possibilities of the variety of different, everybody trades differently. Like, I'm familiar with ICT concepts and I utilize them to a certain extent, not to the extent that you do. And so there's a lot of familiarity for me. And I think anybody who has watched this show for any period of time, we talk about ICT concepts a lot. They're obviously very popular. A lot of people trading them, a lot of people talking about them. I find it really, really interesting to move into that 10-second time frame. Again, I feel like, look, NQ is fast enough. Like, that thing moves like crazy as it is. Do I really want to look at it on a 10-second time frame? But I got to tell you, I'm now super curious as to what that would look like. And when we're done here, I'm probably going to do a little replay at 10 seconds on my NQ charts. Because, again, this just opens up another possibility of how to look at what it is that we're looking at, what it is that's bringing us, success as traders. Now, look, obviously they're talking in the chat about the fact that you're a young guy working hard, and it's just very refreshing to see that. And I 100% agree with that. Now, at this point, let's real quick, because we've only got a couple minutes left. What has the world of trading brought to your world, to your future, that you could see that wouldn't be there without the world of trading?
I always had a vision. I always had a future vision of what trading could bring me. And for me, it was always a matter of when, not a matter of if, because if you go into something, whether it be trading, whether it be selling, sales, whether it be real estate, when you have that faith, that belief in your own competency and your capability to just do the right things, execute, be disciplined, then you're going to succeed no matter what. So I was seeing myself succeeding one way or another, because even if I did get derailed or distracted in life, trading was always that one thing that I came back to because of just the amount of potential that I saw in it, and the how much it fit with my own personality. Just not having a boss, not having to answer to anybody. But obviously there's two sides of the coins when you don't have a boss and not answer to anyone. Some people can take the complacent and lazy route. They start to go that route, or you can keep yourself accountable, be your own boss, and actually do what you need to do to grow. And it's a never-ending cycle of growth and improvement when it comes to trading. So trading has brought a multitude of value financially. It strengthened my mind, my principles, and my core, and improved me overall as a person. Understanding yourself and knowing yourself is the one thing.
I love it, man. I started off the show talking about how this show and having these conversations has kept me in the game of trading. It's no wonder when we have conversations like this from such a variety of different traders. But again, I think everybody seems to be focused. I think you have some fans in the chat. everybody seems to be focused on your age, which I don't think is a distinction that makes a difference. I think it's who and what you are and the decisions that you make, no matter what your age, that will determine your level of success. And clearly, you've come to those right decisions earlier than maybe some of the rest of us. And I love that. I think that's fantastic. So for those of you who are watching for the first time, this is not a one-time shot. Come check us out week in, week out, every Monday, minus holidays. Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern time for 30 minutes. And we're going to be back again next week with another amazing guest and another amazing show. If you're a regular, I can't thank you enough. As I mentioned in the very beginning, you guys have been what has kept me doing this show, and doing the show is what has kept me in the game of trading as long as it has, and has changed my life forever. I can't even begin to tell you how much it's changed my life at this point. So thank all of you. And don't forget, next week, Monday, 11 a.m., going to have a new guest, new insights, new perspective on the game of being a paid funded trader. If you have not done so, make sure to fill out that form for the free evaluations. We'll be giving those away through Apex Trader Funding. And thanks to Apex Trader Funding for everything that you guys do. You make all of this possible. Anyway, Devin, thanks for hanging out with me today, man. I really appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely a pleasure. We'll probably have you on again.
I'd love to be back.
Awesome. We will see all of you on the next Trader Bacon Show. Thanks for joining the Trader Bacon Show, where we showcase everyday traders that are getting funded, paid, and bringing home the bacon. Make sure to join us next time, Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern.